Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're having a lovely start to your day, and if you're not, then I hope this brings you somewhat of a nice listen for today. Who knows? But I've just got to say, I'm really happy that it's getting into summer. Like, I'm really enjoying this. I don't know what it is. I don't know about where any of you guys are, but in London, when the sun comes out, it makes the world of difference. I don't know why, but London in the sun is quite literally chef's kiss. Like, I see it and I think, oh, I'm so glad I live here. And this summer is the first like proper summer where I've been living in my flat and everything's decorated. I'm so excited. And I'm so excited for the summer. I just feel like really good things are coming. I'm in a very good like feel good era at the moment. I think it's come from like a post I'm going to put in quotations, breakup, because I won't really break up, boy leaving me, walking away, to then like just realizing that my Pilates are really paying off. And then I'm like, oh, it's so good. But if you're not feeling good, it's okay. I'm not always like this. I'm just having a good moment. So, just enjoying that whilst I have it, because it's always good to enjoy the good, positive moments. And if you're not feeling great, positive things will come. I promise you. But also I wanted to mention before we get into the episode that a clip on TikTok went viral. Well, I don't know what you class as viral these days, but it had 300k views, and I had no idea until my friend Tia sent it to me, and I was like, oh my god, what the hell. So I literally went from like having 8 followers to like 900, and I was like, oh my god. So thank you so much if you found me through that. And if you didn't, and you're already a follower and a subscriber and a listener, I don't know what you call it, subscribe to follow, I don't know. I'm very grateful for you to be here. So definitely going to be posting more on the TikTok front, because that I posted on a whim. So I'm going to hopefully post some more over there. So make sure you follow the Still Got Time podcast TikTok, and also the Instagram. Plug it whilst I'm here, and YouTube if you want to watch it, because I know some people like to watch these things. You are able to watch it. It's out there. Not many people watch it, but if you are interested in watching it, you can. It's out there for you guys to go and watch. But yeah, today I actually wanted to talk to you guys about age. I don't know if this is kind of a rogue thing to talk about over here, because I don't really talk about things like this, but I do think it's a really interesting topic, and I wanted to talk about it because it's an interesting topic. Age is something that we very much like have certain things attached to when it comes to age, like certain places you're supposed to be, the way you feel. Certain ages are like classed as old, certain ages are classed as young, whatever. And as you get older, I think we attach age to so much of things, and I think there's so many elements to it. So I thought today I would just chat about it. I also asked on my Instagram for your guys' thoughts, and I want to share those as well, because there's some really interesting ones. And I think that part of age is definitely down to preference and how you view age, but then also there's so many elements to age, because as a human you get older and things change as you get older and things happen as you get older. So you can't really like attach age to everything, but some things do attach. Age is very important, do you know what I mean? So I thought that we could just chat about some things. I think that a lot of us, as we reach late 20s, we start to feel very fearful of what's to come. I've heard from a lot of people that your 30s are way better than your 20s, which I kind of totally feel like makes sense, because in your 20s you do so much learning and you're going through so much stuff, because you're almost like you're going from being a young adult to being like a fully fledged adult. And I think then when you get into your 30s, you're living life you can comfortably afford. You can, do whatever you want. You're not like, developing in a career most of the time. Most people, I'm not saying everyone, but a lot of people have established what they want to do and where they want to go. So 30s, they can afford a better life. They can do what they want, go on holidays, etc. a little bit more than maybe they could in their 20s. But that's not the case for everyone, obviously. And I know that, as someone who's in their late 20s, I'm 28, for anyone who doesn't know. I don't fear the 30s just yet, but I do feel like there is a societal pressure where you feel like, oh my God, at 30, like I need to be in my career, I need to be sorted. I need to have the husband. I need to be like ready to have kids and all these things. And I mean, I don't feel that yet. I'm very much in my like enjoying life era and just like enjoying being single and just having a bit of, you know, alone time, if you will. But I just feel quite comfortable and confident as to where I'm at. So I'm not too fussed about that. But also, who knows, I might get to 29 and feel a little bit fearful. Who knows? Like, I'm not at that point. I'm not at the point of almost turning 30. So can't really give you the best advice on that one. But I actually saw a TikTok yesterday, and it was this girl saying that it's so funny that by the time we get to 30, we feel like we should be somewhere and we should have our life sorted. But actually, when you really put it into perspective, your first adult year is 21, right? So when you get to 28, you've only lived 8 years of adult life. And that technically means you're only 8 in adult world. And I found it so fascinating. So when you think about it, if you're 28 and you've only had 8 years of adult life, that's 8 years of experience. That's not a lot. Same goes if you're only 25 and you've only been an adult for 5 years. Like, when you're 8 years old or when you're 5 years old, you haven't learned that much. There's so much to learn. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, like, in the grand scheme of things, we've gone through a lot of life. We've done a lot of learning by the time we get to 28. But I find it really interesting how we feel as though when we're in our 20s that we should be somewhere and we should have achieved so many things, when actually you're only starting out life in your 20s, and actually from your 30s onwards is when you start like properly living life and having, you know, more go on, and you're not going through that like learning and, you know, going through school and going through uni and learning to get to the job you want. Do you know what I mean? There are so many more things coming like after. Obviously, I don't know, I'm still in my 20s, I couldn't tell you, but that's kind of how I feel it's kind of how life is going. Do you know what I mean? That's like the next thing that would happen. But one thing I think is very, very interesting, and I'm sure a lot of you will agree, is that we attach age to success, or success to age. So if you're 30 and you haven't got your dream job, you haven't got like some sort of like career on the way, you are working an underpaid job, you haven't got a stupid amount of money, you haven't bought a house, you haven't got kids, apparently at that age you haven't made it, you haven't got there, you're not successful. Just because you haven't got those things at 30 doesn't mean to say you're not successful. I think a lot of people, and because of society, we believe that you must have everything by the time you're 30. But actually, like, a lot of people become successful in, you know, in their 80s. Some people become successful in their 50s. We shouldn't really feel like we have to have life sorted and done and dusted and ready by the time we're 30. Because realistically, if you've only been an adult for a little bit of time, how can you have everything sorted by the time you're 30? I think that society makes us believe that we have to have everything at that time. And I think the way like life has moved and changed, and life is so different to how it used to be. Like, when our parents were having kids, it was very, very normal to have kids quite young. A lot of people had kids before they were 30. A lot of people I know, their parents had their parents had them when they were, you know, between the ages of like 25 and 30, whereas now a lot more people are having kids 30 plus. And my parents had me when they were both 40. Well, they had me when they were 40, and my sister when they were 42. And I recently actually met some girls who also had parents that are a bit older, and it actually was quite refreshing, because from someone who grew up with older parents, it seemed kind of like everyone had young parents at the time when I was growing up. Not that it was a bad thing, but I think, you know, when you're growing up in that area, it can feel a little bit like, well, why are my parents older? And I think now I've got older, I understand why my parents were older, because they didn't want to have children young. They wanted to live their lives, and I really, really rate that. And obviously, as women, we do have to be careful, because we have a body clock, and, you know, we can't wait forever, and we need, if we want to have kids, you've got to have it at a certain time. So that is something I think a lot of women do definitely attached to age, and there's every right to, because we do have to be careful. You can't have a baby when you're 50. You can't have a baby when you're, a bit older. So you do have to think about it. And that is something that I definitely fear and definitely think about, because I'm in my late 20s, I'm single. And for me, I know an age that I'd like to have kids by, but at the same time, I don't know what's going to happen. And, if I'm at a point where I really want kids and I'm still single, for example, then you've got to go down that road of, right, well, I'm going to have to find another way of doing this, because I can't just magic up a baby. Do you know what I mean? So that is something I do think is very much attached to age, is the idea of having children. And as women, we definitely all think about it if you want to have a child. I do have that slight bit of relief, because my mum had me when she was 40, so I do have that tiny bit of relief in the fact that okay, it makes a little bit of sense. I think my grandma must have had my mum or her brother, her younger brother, at the age of 40 or something like that, because my grandma was a lot older, so that's mad as well. So I don't stress too much, but obviously it really depends on your situation. Your mum might struggle to have kids or whatever. So I think kids and having babies, and as women we do worry about it, and that I totally understand. I actually think that is probably one of the biggest things to people ever, especially for women, because you can, age is something that you can kind of brush to the side with a lot of things, well, most things, but when it comes to kids, you really can't brush it past. And that is something that we all definitely fear. It. It's hands down. Sometimes I think, should I have a baby now? And I'm like, I don't really want a baby. Also, nowhere near at the point of being ready for a baby. And that's also the thing, right? You might be at the age where you should have a baby, but if you're not ready for it, then why would you have one? If you're in a really loving relationship and you that's maybe a possible next step, it kind of can fit in. But if you're like me, I live on my own, the last thing I would do right now is have a child, because I don't feel ready to bring it into my life. And I wouldn't want to, be in that position where I'm stuck, looking after a baby on my own when I am not ready for it. And there is nothing wrong with that, by the way. If you are someone who's having a baby and you're on your own, there's nothing wrong with it. I am just not at the point in my life where I could cope well with it. I don't want to do that. I'm not ready for it. But yeah, I just think that one with kids is the most important one, and we all know that. But there are so many other areas and things that we attach age to. I've got a few little things written down on my list, which I'm going to read. So these are just things that I kind of thought about last night when I was thinking about this, and, having a little discussion in my head, if you will. One thing I definitely feel is that I actually personally think I'm younger than my age. And that's not down to the fact that I don't feel like I'm mature or anything like that. I feel younger than my age, and whenever I spoke to my dad and asked him about how old he feels, he always feels like he's way younger than he actually is, and he forgets that he's getting older and forgets that he can't do the things he used to be able to do. My dad is super fit just from his job, not from exercise as such, but he has always been quite good at basically he was like a mechanic, so he did a lot of things and heavy lifting and whatnot. Anyway, not the point. So he always feels younger than he is, and I 100% feel younger than I am. I don't feel like I'm 28. I don't feel like I'm at the point of a 28-year-old. I actually feel like I'm at the point of maybe a 25-year-old. But also there's no rules on where you should be at a certain age and what you should be doing. I just don't feel 28. I do feel younger. And I think it's also partially because I look younger. So I kind of have that feeling anyway. But yeah, I don't know. There's just this feeling in me. I don't feel like I'm at the point where I should be an adult, who's about to have a family or anything like that. But I think that's because society has made us believe that you should feel a certain type of way by a certain age, when actually you don't need to feel like that. You don't need to feel a certain way by a certain age. You can have kids whenever you want, obviously in the time bracket. You can, have the dream job whenever you want. You can feel as young as you want. You don't need to be at a certain point by a certain age. And I feel young, but I'm 28. I feel like I'm the same age as everyone. Whereas one of my friends, she's 22. I feel the same age as her, but she is like, what, 6 years younger than me. And that is like, that blows my mind. The fact that like we, as adults, we never know how old the next person is. You could gauge an age, but you never know how old someone is. And, you know, you could be friends with someone who's 10 years older than you, 10 years younger than you. You could be friends with someone who's 30 years older than you. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no like rule book with how much age gap you can have between friends or between, you know, you never know someone's age. Yet it's something so important to us in so many ways. I, for a long time, was actually really, really like a bit iffy with having friends that were a lot younger than me. I think throughout like early 20s, I really struggle with it, because if you're in your early 20s and you're friends with people who are in their late teen years, that can kind of cause a little bit of like, I don't know what you call it, like you can maybe not gel so well, because those people in their teen years are kind of still developing into like young adults. Whereas like if you're in your early 20s, you've kind of gone through your teen years and you can kind of see it in other people, and it can be really hard to like gel with those people. But now that I'm a bit older and I'm friends with people that are a bit younger than me, I don't really see it so much. I think it was just like a bit of an iffy time when you're like still trying to figure out who you are as a young adult. And now, I mean, I'm still a young adult, but you know what I mean. But now when I'm friends with people, I really think about the actual person and who they are and how we gel well together. And I have a friend who's 22, but that doesn't make any difference. You wouldn't know, because she's just, maybe, I guess you could say, a bit more mature for her age, but like she just is on the same page as me. And I love that. The fact that she's 6 years younger than me doesn't really make a difference. And we're really good friends. I also have friends that are a similar age to me. I don't actually have many friends older than me, which is weird, but in the industry that I work in, there's a lot of younger people, a lot of people that are younger than me. So a majority of my friends are either my age or younger. I've actually not met anyone really in recent years who's been older than me. I used to attach that idea that if anyone was like younger than my sister, I was like, my sister is 2.5 years younger than me. And I've actually got a good few friends that are younger than my sister. And I just never know, because like, just because someone's a certain age doesn't mean to say that, you know, you can't be friends with them, or they're not going to work, or they're just not going to gel in your life. Like, absolutely not. Like, to me, my sister is always going to be my little sister, but that doesn't mean to say that I can't be friends with people that are a similar age to my sister. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, another thing I did mention about success being by a certain age, we all feel like we should be a certain place by a certain age. I do think it's mostly more important for guys to think like this than women. This is just my judgment, by the way, because I think for men and, you know, guys in general, they want to be the breadwinner. They always do. They always want to be like the one who brings in the money. They always want to be the most successful one. And sometimes in this world, you don't get to where you want to be for a very long time. It takes a bit of time. It takes a bit of time to maybe switch jobs and try different things. And some guys do just want to be super successful as soon as possible. And sometimes it just doesn't work out like that. And I think it's just that guy's instinct, that men instinct to be the one that provides for his family and his wife, etc., etc. And obviously, as life and society has changed, it's not so much an important thing to have in this world a man that can provide. If a woman can provide just as well, it still works. I just think any guy who is like adamant that they must earn more than a woman is just completely wrong, in my opinion, because why do you have to be more important than the woman? Like, I've actually met a few guys that care more about being more successful than the person they're with, and I can't get my head around it. I can't get my head around it, because surely it's a good thing that someone is also earning good money as well. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I think that is a very big thing with men, because they want to be successful as soon as possible, because then it's almost like they get that, like, what's the word? They get that, like, what is it? It makes them more masculine, I guess. They get like that idea that, yes, I'm finally a man because I've got this successful job and I'm earning so much money and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, you're just like, I don't think it makes you any better of a person. if you've got a good job. Like, I think sometimes men think that they must be at a certain point, have a certain job, earn a certain amount of money, and it will make them masculine and it will make them better. But just because you have a good job doesn't make your personality better. One thing to note, really doesn't make your personality better. And I think a lot of guys think that. It's not going to make girls come running. Some girls might, but they're the ones who like don't want to work. I actually don't know. I actually don't know. But you know, they're the girls that aren't going to be strong-minded. The girls that are strong-minded aren't going after a guy that is only like focused on being someone who's like better than everyone else. Do you know what I mean? I do also think that age is a bit more of a mindset. If you think about it, it is kind of like a mindset, right? Because we sit here and we talk about age and, you know, I want to be here by a certain age and I want to be doing this and I want to own a house and all these things. But it's more of just like where you see life going and detaching it from that actual like age. For instance, I'm 28. Do I think I'm going to buy a house anytime soon? Probably not. I'd love to buy a house. It's definitely up there with one of the things I'd love to do and I want to do. But it's not a priority. I think we are made to believe that we must buy a house. And if you rent, then, oh my God, what are you doing? You're paying other people's mortgages, which I just don't understand. Just because you rent does not mean to say that you are losing out on your money, that you are paying someone else's mortgage, which you are, yes, but like, why is that a bad thing? A lot of people rent for their whole entire lives, yet we're led to believe that we must buy a house because therefore we'll be having something that we like belongs to us and, you know, not paying someone else's rent. But actually, like, some people can't afford that, and I don't see anything wrong with renting as long as you're content and happy. Like, you don't need to buy a house. Saying that, I would love to buy a house, and I do think when I buy a house, I'll buy it with someone, aka my husband, when he arrives. But you know, like, a house isn't the be all and end all, and I think we do get told to believe that you need a house. But I don't really feel ready for buying a house yet. So that is my mindset is not based around the age in which I'm going to buy a house. My mindset is based around, okay, well, where do I see myself going? What's important to me? What am I doing? Like, obviously I have that body clock baby timeline, which I'm obviously still thinking about, and that will always be at the back of my mind. But I don't attach, like, by the time I'm 35, I must have this business and I must be doing this and I must be this successful. I'm more just kind of like, I want to live my life and enjoy it. And that to me is more important than having all these successful goals. Obviously I have goals and all these goals are important to me, but they are not the top priority thing. And they're not the thing that I'm attaching to an age, because I do think often when you attach something to a certain timeline or an age, you then get disappointed if you don't reach it. So I think it's almost better to just be like, I'd like to be here by this age, but I'm not that fussed, rather than being like, by the time I'm 35, I must have 3 kids, be married, buy a house, and have a dog, and have the most successful job, and, you know, I don't know, have a £1 million business. It's like, why are you attaching your life goals to that when life has a weird way of working and you can't attach every single thing that you want to an age? Because at the end of the day, you might get to that age and be so far from it. Because when you think about it, right, I'm 28. In 5 years' time, I'll be 33. 5 years is a long time, but it's also not that long. And if I sat here and said right now, oh, I'm going to start a business, and I'm going to have a really £1 million business, there's no way of knowing whether your business is going to be a £1 million business in 5 years. Some people's businesses take years to like get off the ground. So I think sometimes attaching serious life goals like that to an age can be kind of a bit tricky. Obviously, we all have life goals, like, it's normal, but when you attach it so much to an age, by the time I'm that age, I must be at this point. You know, I think it can be a little bit, it really can be quite a negative outlook on it sometimes. Like, you want to be positive and be like, I hope to get to this point at this age. But if you're really like putting so much pressure onto a particular type of age, that is when, you know, it can seem as something so like, what is the word? It's gone out of my head. But you know, when you're like, what is the word? Pressure. You're putting so much pressure on it. And if you don't get it to that point, then it just doesn't go right. But I do think that age with dating is also definitely down to preference. I don't have anything against people that date younger people, older people, different age gaps. Everyone has their own opinion and their own preference when it comes to age and dating. You could date someone who's 10 years older than you could date someone who's 10 years younger than you. It's very much a normal thing, especially as you get older. I think the older couples tend to not care so much about age, but I think when you're in your 20s, age does definitely become more of an important thing. I know someone who's dating a guy who's 10 years older than her, and she's similar age to me, but I also know people that, you know, date younger. For me, I personally like the idea of dating someone of a similar age to me. I'm not saying that they have to be my age, because a lot of boys are not mature at a certain age, and that's something to note. Not every boy by the age of 30 is going to be ready for kids. I've learned a lot of boys are never ready for kids, and they're never ready for anything. They might be 40 before they're ready for something. And also, age, it doesn't really matter with boys in terms of their maturity. It literally makes no difference. A boy could be mature at 22 and he could be more mature than someone who's 35. And that is nothing down to the fact that he's younger. It's down to the fact that he's just a more mature guy. Their age doesn't really matter with boys and maturity. So never ever attach your want to meet someone and want to be with someone just because they're a certain age. If they are a bit younger, give it a go. You never know, because some guys are just ready for things and some guys aren't. So I do think we all need to, if you're dating obviously, we need to remember that just because a guy maybe is a bit younger, a bit older, give it a go. You never know. And this is advice I need to give to myself, because I'm very stuck in my ways. I don't really want to date someone too much younger, but I also don't want to date someone who's too much older. I have this fear, and I don't know if anyone else does, and this is something that, you know, isn't really something to fear, but I do worry about it, and that is that if I date someone who's older, obviously I'm in my late 20s, if they have children, I'm not ready to be around someone who has a child. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because I don't think there's anything wrong with dating anyone who has a child. I know people that date people that have children, but I'm not physically ready to take on that idea of looking after a child. I'm just about figuring out my own life now on my own. So for me, I just want to date someone who is of in a similar headspace, wants to kind of just, I don't know, but then saying that, who knows? Who actually knows? I have nothing against it, but I just think I'm just not ready for it. So, but then, like I say, who knows? Who knows what happens? You don't know who you're going to meet. But I do think that age is definitely a preference with boys and dating in general. I think as you get older, you kind of forget about the fact that you're looking for someone of a certain age, and you just kind of see what's about. But it's easier said than done, I do think, because age is so... It is because of society, isn't it? We want to date someone who's of similar age so you can grow old together. And that is something that I love the idea of. Both of my parents are the same age. I think my mum is older than my dad, just. And I love that they're the same age. I think that's probably where I get that idea of being the same age as someone from. And I'm not saying same. My ideal age is for someone who's a year older than me. That is my ideal age, or a couple years older than me. That is the ideal age that I would go for. But also I'm not opposed to dating younger, but also you don't necessarily know where a guy is at, but you never know whether a guy has got his head screwed on or not until you meet them. So, you know, boys are a whole whirlwind in themselves. So you never understand any of them because they're just, you know, not really with it. But I thought now I would just go through some of the thoughts and feelings that you guys had, and we can chat about them, because I did get a couple of messages that I thought were really interesting and nice to talk through. So I'm just going to go through those, and then we can go through the other ones. I cannot find them on my phone. This story I thought was really, really lovely, because it does make you realise just how important it is to just live life. I had a magical 1.5 hour train journey chatting to a complete stranger who wore his age with pride. He's 87 in June. He'd been given 4 months to live, his wife had dementia, and yet he told me he'd loved his life. He said every life was a story, and to never forget that every breath was a gift. That makes my heart melt, first of all, and second of all, that is so sweet and just shows how important it is to just live life, enjoy life, have a good time, don't stress out. Like, age is literally a number. It's a number, and not attach your, like, he's 87 and he's like out there just being like, I'm given 4 months to live and I just want to have a good time, just want to enjoy myself. Like, warms my actual heart, warms my heart. But another one, it's actually from my friend Tia. I feel like where you are depends on the level of pressure to reach a certain milestone, e.g. more pressure in London to have a successful career by your mid to late 20s, but more pressure in smaller towns to settle down and have children, which makes so much sense, because I know a lot of people from school who still live in the same town, and a lot of them, you know, are moving in together, and they're getting married and having kids and all those kind of things. Whereas I do believe when you're in London, it is solely about career. It's not about settling down. People want to know what's the next job, what's the next amount of money you can make. Whereas when you're in a small town, I do think it's more about what's the next milestone, when you're having your next kid, when you're having a dog, do you know what I mean? Which makes so much sense. And I do think that depending on where you are in life and where you're living and what you're doing will depend on the pressure that you feel. For me, the pressure I do think in this world that I'm living in is being more successful in my career, even though I know I'm already successful, and also finding someone and having kids. Those are the two pressures I feel. But also my main one is like building on my career, and I totally get it, because obviously I live in London and I don't live in a small town. I'm not living in a small town anymore. I did quite enjoy living at home for many years, and then it got to the point where I was like, no, I had enough of this. Right, so I'm going to go into my question box now and read you guys some of the messages that I got, because these are like interesting. I find it really interesting. So someone said, I'm 36 and people ask me all the time when I'm having kids, which I can completely understand, because people always say, like, in your 30s, I guess in your 30s, from 30 to 40 is the time that most people have children. So if you're not having children, it's like the most common question that you might get. And also I do think it's like, we're at that point in life now where it's okay if you don't want kids. Like, I think for many, many years, like, kids was important. It's always like a part of life. Whereas I don't think it's so important now to have kids if you don't want kids. And if someone doesn't want kids, they don't want kids. Like, let them live, because not everyone is the same. Someone said, can't make mistakes after your teen years, which is very true. I think we don't feel like we can make mistakes, because we feel as though, like, if you're making a mistake in your 20s, then like that's something you should have already learned, which is not necessarily the case, because everyone takes their own time when it comes to learning things and growing as a person. And you might not have done your growing in your early teens, but now you're doing it in your 20s, or you might have struggled throughout your 20s and you're doing it in your 30s. I think that growth happens whenever it happens, and sometimes we feel like we should be the most successful in our 20s, when actually, like, I'm pretty sure most people are more successful in their 30s because they've established a career by that point. Someone said, some ages do feel like they hold value, such as 21, 25, 30 seem to hold a lot more value than turning 26, for example, which I do agree with. I completely agree with. I think that when I turn 28, it means nothing, but then like a big thing will happen when I'm 30. So, and that's purely because, like, you know, as society, that's how it's kind of made to feel. If you don't do something big on those ages, then you feel as though you haven't achieved something, and you haven't lived a particular life, or you haven't had a good life. Do you know what I mean? I do think that if you haven't done something big on those birthdays, then did it even happen? So yeah, I completely get that. She's also said, I also think the thing happening in your life can affect the weight birthdays can have. For example, if you're engaged and you're going to be married in 18 months, or you're trying to buy a house, I felt these can impact how it feels at the next birthday. Which again, yeah, which makes so much sense, because if when your next birthday happens and you're at the point where you're buying a house, it's like, oh, that's a really big birthday, and you're like, oh my god, I bought a house by the time I'm 22. And it's like, it doesn't make a difference whether you buy a house at 22 or 48. It literally makes no difference. I think we just make it such a big thing because, oh my god, you're so young and you've bought a house in London, oh my god, wow. Obviously it's exciting, but like, I think we feel as though if we have not achieved those things at a young age, then we haven't really achieved them like at the best time. I don't know, I think that's how I feel about houses anyway. But yeah, I do think it does make a difference on like birthdays, and if you're having a really successful period of time, you attach it to your birthday and you attach it to that age. Like, oh my god, when I was 25, I got to this point. And like, that becomes a really, really big part of your life. So yeah, I do agree with that one. Definitely think I expect myself to be somewhere career and relationship wise by a certain age. And yeah, I completely agree with that, because I mean, my career has been a slow development, and I got to my dream job when I was, oh god, how old was I? See, this is how little I attach my age to things. 24, I think. Yes, because I turned 25 in COVID. And it was like a huge jump. I didn't even know if I was going to make any money. It was like a complete whim. And I don't think yet I am the most, I still feel like there's so much more success I can gain. Does that make sense? I think so. I would say my most successful time would have been in 2022, maybe. And I would have been 20. Oh my God, I can never remember how old I am. Yeah, 27. That's how old I would say I was when I felt successful. But I still have that pressure of like, I am now, my next step for me is meeting someone and settling down and finding my husband. But I can't expect to have found that person by a certain age. So yeah, I feel the pressure because I'd like to meet someone and be with them for a bit before I get to the point of having kids. So I don't want to be, so for me, I'd like to meet someone now so that I can have a few years yet before I get to the point of having children and still being able to do the things I want to do before having children. Because as we all know, children are expensive and you want to be at a point where you can afford it. So I'm with you on that one. Someone said, I had my second child at the age of 28 and felt old as a mum of two, which is mad to me because that's so young. She's like, I know it's not. Someone also said, I think this is more like relating to like dating people. I think it depends on the person and the vibe they have, which I completely agree. I do think that if you meet someone, I remember once I went out, and I think it was during the pandemic times, and a boy came over to our table and started talking to me, and he was 22, and I completely was just like, no. I was like, absolutely not, you're far too young for me. And I was I would have been 26 maybe. So that's funny. 42 and happier than I was at any point in my life, but I do look 30, so it makes it easier. Love that. Definitely just a number. I'm 35 with a 10-year-old son, and I feel like my life is only just beginning. I think that is something that I've heard a lot about being in your 30s and like life being so much better. And I think that's something that's so interesting because as like people in your 20s, that's when you worry about age and worry about things so much more than when you're in your 30s. So it's interesting to hear these things because I think people, from what I gather, when you're in your 30s, you just have such a more like carefree, less stressful life. I agree with you. People are made to feel like age is measured by milestones, but that only forces us to create societal norm. But that's actually what the norm is in reality, which is so true. Like, I think the societal norm is what we make it, but we don't change to not make it the societal norm, so it continues to be the societal norm. So anything that we attach to age, we attach to age because we've always attached it to age, but we're not changing it. So we will continue to attach things to age, and like milestones will always be attached to certain ages. So yeah, that is kind of a hard one because there's nothing we can do about it unless we as a society change it, which is not going to happen. So it then does boil down to your mindset and how you believe it to be. I'm almost 29, but I feel like I'm 20. I also like boys that are definitely younger than me. Love that. We're here for that. We love a young man. Turning 30, pressure is so real. Yes, I've heard this from so many people. Obviously, I'm not turning 30, but I know that when I get there, I probably will feel the pressure for sure. Someone said, totally just a number. I'm 36 now and I feel better than I did when I was 26, mentally and physically. Definitely a consensus that when you're 30 and above, life gets better. But obviously, if you're a woman, it's tough because you want to have children. Trust me, once you get past 30, you'll stop caring. 30 is liberating. It seems to be a running theme that when you get to 30, that life gets better. And I think that's what we should get excited about. When you hit 30, apparently life is 10 times better. And you know what? I'm excited for it. And that's how I'm looking at it. That's how I have been feeling anyway about turning 30, because actually it is just a number. And, you know, from what I've heard, everyone just seems to love life so much more. And I do think there's a lot less stress because you're not around people that are all, I feel like when you hit 30, you've either got friends that are married, you've got friends that are engaged, you've got friends that are having babies, people that are traveling, you've got people that are just reaching what they want to do in their career. And I think that you're less likely to compare yourself against the next person because everyone's doing what they want to do. Whereas I think in your 20s, we're all comparing against the next person, like where she got to by her age, because I want to get there and I want to do that and I want to be successful and I want to get to where I want to be because I need to do that because I need to compete with her. But actually, like, everyone's on their own path and everyone's doing their own thing. And just because you're in your late 20s and you haven't reached your dream job doesn't mean to say you won't reach it. And also doesn't mean to say that, you know, you're any less successful. Age doesn't mean anything when it comes to success. You could be successful in your 40s and you can be successful in your 20s. It really like makes no difference. Just think about all those like famous people out there who have become famous in their older ages, over like they've been working for so many years, acting roles for years and years and years. They've been in so many like small budget movies, and then they finally get the job that like skyrockets them into their career at the age of 40. It happens so many times, and those actors then become huge for like, you know, 10, 15 years after that. But just because they, you know, weren't famous before doesn't mean to say they're never successful. They've just had their moment and it's taken off. So, you know, don't ever attach your success to an age because you've got so much time ahead of you. And I think we do have this idea that if you don't get it by the time you're 30, well, that's it, life's over. But actually, that's 30 years of life. You've still got another, what, at least 60? That's kind of mad, isn't it? That's kind of mad. You have at least another 60 years. Well, let's say at least another 40 years, 40, 50 years of life. Oh my God, that's actually mad. That's blown my mind. But my overall feeling is that age is just a number. But for women, it's, you know, we have a time frame. So we have to be careful. And that's something we all think about. And that is something that we should all keep on our minds if you want to have children. Also, men, doesn't really matter their age. Judge it by the person and what they want. And if they are at the right point that you are, then roll with it. Don't stress about it. If they're 30 and they're still immature, they're going to stay immature. Believe me. Boys don't mature at a certain age at all. So date the guy for, you know, them being good and nice and what you want over their age. Believe you me, it's not worth it. I've dated a few 30-year-olds and believe you me, none of them have been at the point of settling down. So don't do it. Just date someone who's nice and good vibes, even if they are 3, 4, 5, 6 years younger than you. But yeah, I hope this was a nice, interesting thing to chat about and listen to. If you have any thoughts on this, do DM me on my Instagram, which is I'm Charlotte Olivia, or the Still Got Time podcast Instagram. Follow that as well for like updates of new episodes in case you missed them. And also follow the TikTok, which is Still Got Time podcast on TikTok. But yeah, I'm gonna love you and leave you. I hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, if you've got any episode ideas or anything you'd like me to talk about, let me know. And I'll see you all next week. Bye.